So the critical voice and then the compassionate voice. And the compassionate voice, people will say, I don't know what that person would say. I'm not in touch with us, but you just make it up or you say the opposite. And that may even sound very silly and foolish, but when people do it, you'd be so surprised at what that voice says, whether, your previous person said the Holy Spirit or higher power, whatever you want to call that voice. It says the most loving things like, precious Sally girl, I love you so much.
Hello there and welcome to Wild and Finally Fucking Free, where midlife isn't a time of crisis but a time of metamorphosis. Just like the journey through puberty and pregnancy to postpartum, our midlife transition is also a powerful portal of rebirth. The wise woman inside of us is calling, inviting us to slow down, to take stock, to speak our truth, to burn away all that no longer serves us, ready to step forward into our next phase of life. I'm your host, Kylie Patchett, storyteller and midlife self-care coach, and together we'll unearth the real and raw stories of women who are right in the messy, magical middle or have come out the other side, and the healers who help all of us through these crossroads of change. I hope that as you listen to these tales of breaking the ties that bind, shedding skins and courageously chasing midlife dreams, that you too will answer the wise woman's invitation and set yourself wild and finally fucking free. Let's dive in.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the podcast. I have the beautiful Sally Bartlett with me today. Hello, Sally. How are you?
Hello, Kylie. How are you?
I'm so well. I'm very tired, but we'll get to that. Before we maybe we will start with that because it actually introduces your beautiful book and some of the work you do in the world. So I was just explaining to you before we started recording that I love my sleep. Went through a period last year where my sleep went out the window with perimenopause, and with a lot of different lifestyle and layers of support in place, I've gotten back to decent sleep. And last night I went to bed at 10, and I woke up at 12:30 and I stayed awake until 5 a.m. this morning. The blessing is that I actually find that I'm quite creative in the middle of the night. So that's one weird thing. But I've had your book, which is called this first book, or is it the second one? Yeah, that's the first. It's called Damn It, It Is Menopause, Meditations for Women to Achieve Clarity and Confidence Beyond Their Wildest Dreams. I am loving on this book so hard. I've had it for about 6 weeks now. And what I love about it is that you have included in it these, I call them self-care snacks or journaling prompts or whatever. And they're just little things. And so every night when I go to bed, I pick a couple and I just randomly pick. And today I did the same thing because I was like, I can't wait to speak to Sally because I feel like I know you. And guess which one I picked? The one about being so tired. And I was like, this is the magic of Sally Bartlett. So welcome.
Thank you. That's exactly how I intended it. You could just pick it up anywhere and just trust the universe that it was going to be fitting for you today.
I love it. I love it. Now that I've told the story, please tell everybody about you and the work that you do in the world. And then I want to start at the very beginning about introducing me.
All right. I'm so happy to be here, Kylie, and get to talk to you. I am Sally Bartlett. I am a health coach / personal fitness trainer for decades, menopause educator, and author of the award-winning book, Damn It, It Is Menopause, Meditations for Women to Achieve Clarity and Confidence Beyond Their Wildest Dreams. Yes, so that's who I am.
Amazing, 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 amazing. I love your entire approach to this. And I love the fact that I'm going to make this podcast all about me, but there's so many things that you write about. Like when you actually, guests, for those in the community, guests fill out a few questions when they book in. And Sally and I have been talking backwards and forwards. It's taken us quite a while to get a date because then I wasn't recording over Christmas, whatever. And so I hadn't read your questions for quite a long time. And when I did, I read, growing up in a family where emotional regulation dysfunction was the norm resulted in my using food and alcohol as coping tools. And I was just like, parallel lives, my friend. Can we start there? Because I really would love, I love getting to know why people do the work they do in the world. But I feel like when you grow up in a family like that, you can form some protective mechanisms, which are coping mechanisms, but aren't healthy ones. So please tell us a little bit more about what that was like for you.
That resulted in a lot of faulty problem solving, bad relationships. You think of it as that's going to result in overweight. And yes, it can. And you have a disjointed or a strange relationship with food and alcohol. But people focus on the weight always, but it's also was about, I wasn't able to form good relationships, both with men and with just friends and employers. And so that was one of the first things that stood out to me. And I thought, and I didn't really know what I wanted to major in because all I thought about was dieting back in those days. And I thought I do have to come up with a major here of study. And I thought I need to figure out why I'm doing the things, the weird behaviors I'm doing around food. And so I majored in psychology. And from there, I started to read about evidence-based journaling, and that this was back in the 80s, and it was just starting. And back then, the whole expressive writing thing, and they were doing studies on how journaling can influence your health, like your blood pressure and things like that in a positive way. And that just fascinated me because I had always kept a diary when I was a younger girl. And so I thought, wow, this can really be a powerful thing. And so that was how it all started. And then I began journaling, and I'm going to really shorten the story, but I basically took this and ran with it and developed my own journaling techniques, which through the help of connecting with other women as well, I was able to lose 4 clothing sizes without dieting at all and have remained in that size body for like over 3 decades and continued to use these journaling techniques, and they've evolved. And then I began using them with women that I coached, and they also have had the same great results. So
amazing. I want to come back to what you said about, because my coping mechanism, and I always, when I talk about this on the podcast, I always frame it in, I used a soothing tool that was available to me as a very young child, which was food. So alcohol's never been my thing. I have a parent that's alcoholic, and drugs have never interested me because I don't want to be out of control. I'm using air quotes, but that was always how I felt. But for me, food was that soothing thing. And you are so right. That is the surface issue. But underneath, and I'm speaking from my personal experience now, underneath it all was this deep sense of not feeling safe, not feeling supported, not wanting to be in my body because it wasn't a safe place to be, because I often felt unsafe in my childhood home, not forming real relationships. And also a big thing for me was this caretaking role that I was conditioned to be in, that I have only just started dismantling in the last couple of years since perimenopause bitch slapped me. And I had to really look at how I was spending my energy and my time and my attention and my love, because I just couldn't do it all anymore, which is the blessing of perimenopause. Let's put that right out there. But I love that when you're saying evidence-based journaling, to me, when I journal or when I have quiet time or whatever, I get much more connected to what my internal, I'm going to use parts language because that's something that I'm familiar with, but that internal authentic self, it could be higher self. The last lady that I just did an interview with was saying the voice of the Holy Spirit. And that's more of a kind of a religious connotation to that. But journaling has always helped me separate between that authentic self and this voice of conditioning and fear and unsafety that has driven the body and the weight issues, but actually was not the root cause. Very long summary of what you just said. But I really appreciate how growing up in that environment actually helps you to understand probably quicker than a lot of other people do, because you're in a lot of emotional pain. So you're seeking a solution for it. When you say evidence-based journaling, just to make sure that I'm understanding you and also our listeners, what does evidence-based journaling versus journaling mean? What's the kind of definition? What defines it?
Journaling is a whole
Yeah.
can of worms. And I say evidence-based journaling because it makes itself sound a little bit more credible. It's not, I think when I say evidence-based journaling, I also mean journaling that has had a study, like research parameters put around it very carefully and very by the book, following a specific protocol. My background is not in research per se, so that's my general description of it. But one of the pioneers, I have a book right here, is James Pennebaker. And this book is called, I'll read it, Opening Up by Writing It Down, How Expressive Writing Improves Health and Eases Emotional Pain. So this is one book that I love. And this person, James Pennebaker, is still alive. And he was the one that I heard about when I was way back. So when I say evidence-based journaling, it's mostly so that you don't think I'm talking about like Dear Diary.
Yes.
And what it means to me, what I've done with journaling, just because you journal, people will just roll I might have lost you already when I said journaling because you're like, oh, eyes rolling, like, don't forget it. But what I do is I do a very, it's got a framework to it and I ease you into it painlessly. So like the first thing I do is the self-care P.I.E.S, which we may get into.
Yes, I want to go, that's exactly my next question. So roll on.
It's got specific parameters. So when I say journaling, I say it's going to have very specific parameters. It's not just going to be like, oh, I'm just writing out there to the universe. It's going to have what you just said. I write a letter, and the letter, I may think about that letter is coming from, I call it the critical voice. And then that letter is always going to be, if I write myself a letter from the critical voice and I just let myself have it, like, you shouldn't have said that, your hair's bad, whatever, all the mean things we say to ourselves, then that letter is going to always have a structure. It's always going to be followed. And I cover this in the book over and over. It's always going to be followed by a letter from the compassionate voice. Your hair is perfect. I don't care if your nose is running right now and you have boxes unpacked right behind you that are just below the camera because I moved 3 months ago. Like things like that. Like the voice says, I love you no matter what you ate today, whether it's a whole sleeve, whether it's crackers. I love you no matter what you weigh. I love you all the time. And so there's that structure to it is what is different for me.
This is actually the perfect, and it will actually be that the episode I just recorded will come out the week before this one. But yeah, we talk that the person that I interviewed is a teacher of the Course in Miracles. And so the way that she's describing what you are, and it's all the same, is this voice of love, voice of fear, voice of love, voice of fear. And to me, the identification of the fact that the critical voice was just a protective mechanism from my ego, trying to keep me safe, and all those mean things were just to that end, then it actually makes it much more easy to then open up to what would the compassionate part of me. And again, coming back to the parts where that was the concept of, ourselves having different parts, so critical, compassionate, or whatever, and that parts are there for our highest good because they're just trying to protect these little wounded parts of ourselves. It's such a beautiful thing to understand because then you don't have to believe the voice, right? If the critical voice is gone nuts, and you talk about this in the book as well, that was actually the one that I picked last night when I opened it, about the critical voice is having its way with me today. And I just thought the way that you capture your inner dialogue is so beautiful because it reminds me again and again that I don't have to believe, goosebumps. I don't have to believe the critical voice when it turns up. And something that's been happening to me in perimenopause is my critical voice has gotten so much louder, and particularly when I'm not sleeping well. If I let it, it can go to town. And on these days when I haven't slept well, I actually wrote a post about it, maybe about this time last year, about mental health, sleep, and my sense of self are like a three-legged stool. And anytime one of them is impacted, the other two, you fall off the stool. So yeah, I love the concept of being able to journal backwards and forwards. And I love that you call yourself Sally Girl, because when I do this kind of stuff, my dad used to call me pumpkin pie. And that's how emotional. Yeah, because that is that, I don't know, I can imagine how he would talk to me. And he's been gone for a long time, but it opens up that sort of, if you were talking to yourself like someone who deeply loved and cared about yourself, what would that voice say? So powerful. Can we talk more about the P.I.E.s? Because I love, first of all, the scientist in me loves the fact that when you talk about evidence, because I do think there's a lot of tools out there that people go, this will change your life, but there isn't actually any specific kind of proof or evidence behind it. So I appreciate that from a science perspective. Let's talk about the P.I.E.s as a framework. Or is it too big a concept to break down podcast? Because I don't actually know.
Hey gorgeous, we interrupt this gold for a delicious invitation. If your whole body has been whispering more lately, more voice, more truth, more satisfaction, more clients of the soulmate variety, more cash, more you, then this invitation is for you. Potent, my sister mind is officially open. This is my high touch, holy fuck, I'm ready sister mind for rebels in good girl clothing who are done outsourcing their power and diluting their magic to fit into someone else's business formula. If you have been craving a space where your strategy, your voice, and your energy all get to be offered, honored, refined, and amplified, this is it. Inside of Potent, you will get my eyes on your business every single week, copy mentoring, and that is for brand copy and content storytelling that turns your truth into client catnip, energetic recalibration that helps you unhook old learned limitation patterns, keeping you quiet, not being seen, not being heard, real-time, high-touch, one-on-one coaching that actually sees the bigness of your vision, and the kind of sisterhood that does not flinch when you show up in your full, messy, brilliant, phoenix rising from the ashes glory. This isn't surface level support. It's deep, potent, paradigm shifting work that changes who you are as a woman in business and a woman in life. We start in August. Early open access is open right now. For the month of June 2025, inside of this early access open doors period, you will receive juicy bonuses, extended payment plans, and access immediately to my entire library of storytelling gold. You'll find all the juicy details at kyliepaget.com/potent. And we fill spaces, and there's only 10 of them, and more than likely only 5 by the time you listen to this, because by that time I will have offered them to the existing cohort, the beautiful original OG circle. We do actually take applications on a first come, first served basis. So come and apply, and let's get back to the magic of the episode.
Oh, I think we can touch on it for sure. And I just wanted to add one thing to what you were just saying, Kylie, which is that the main benefit I derive from journaling is that it stops the rumination in my head just going around and around, and then free to live my big, amazing life and connect with the people that are important to me in my life, no matter big or small importance, just the significant people in my life. So that said, the self-care P.I.E.s, I wanted to think of something that was easy to remember. And since I love P.I.E.s, just worked out. So it stands for physical, intellectual, emotional, and spiritual. And so every day there's a therapist that I loved growing into my young adulthood named Patricia Allen. And she says, I know how much I love myself by the contracts I'm willing to make and keep. So I make a daily contract with myself, and I do one thing for physical, one for intellectual, one for emotional, one for spiritual. And it depending, when I began this, I would write them down. So that is in and of itself is a very small form of journaling. If you're just a beginner in journaling, is just to write the 4 things down. So for example, today for physical, I brought the trash barrels in. For intellectual, I did some reading about something that interested me. And for emotional, I pet my dog and threw him the ball. So that was 2 things. And for spiritual, I put lotion on my legs. So all 4 things are interchangeable. They don't have to be like you could say I put lotion on my legs for my physical or for my spiritual. They all can, it's just 4 things, little things that I do for myself. And then if I don't keep the contract, this is where connection comes in. I will usually tell it to somebody else. So there's that connection and that accountability factor. Then the next day I'll tell that friend, I kept the contract or I didn't keep the contract, not to beat myself up, but to realize if I didn't keep any one of those contract items, it's because they were too hard. A huge overachiever, recovering perfectionist, all the things. So I have to keep it it's really simple.
I love this. I love this. I love this. I actually want to just ask you to repeat. So when you said about the self contracts from Patricia Allen, can you say that again? So
I know how much I love myself by the contracts I'm willing to make and keep. So you got to keep them. But only if you don't keep them, it's just because they were too much and you need to make them easier. It doesn't mean like you blew it and you're a loser. You just need to make them. You're making it too hard. If I have Go ahead.
No, go. You finish yours.
I was going to say, if I have a scary phone call to make, like to an attorney or some scary person, and I don't want to make it and I'm scared, I'll put it that I'm going to write their phone number down on part of my contract for one day. And then the next day I can finally, hopefully get my nerve up to call the person. That's how little these are. We're talking little.
Yep. But the power of the little, and this is the power of the small. I will actually give a really great example of this. I have been wanting to, because I'm a copywriter mainly, and I spend a lot of time sitting at a computer. And when I'm on holidays, I will get 10, 11, 12,000 steps daily. No problem at all because I'm doing stuff. Whereas on a work day, I was getting about 1,500 steps some days, which is so bad for your health, mentally, physically, emotionally, all of those things. And so I said to my friend, I really want to work this year on improving my step count. And so I made 7,000 my daily aim. And the way that I went about that was I just am going to go for a walk with the dogs every day. It doesn't matter if the walk is 2 minutes long as I do it every day. And I tell you what, I don't do it every day anymore, but this is how I started this habit. That has transformed into, I generally only take them for 2 or 3 kilometers a day, but over a week, compared to the amount of incidental activity that I still go to the gym and the stuff that I do for formal exercise and the mental health change. But I have always, like a recovering perfectionist like you, set the bar way too hard. So I've been like, I'm going to go to yoga 2 times and I'm going to play wine and I'm going to do strength training. And if I don't do all of that, I've failed. What the fuck? And so the power of the small is where it's in that habit that comes from the power of the small. I love that. I love that. And when you introduce this concept to clients, what do they get as a result of these tiny little shifts? Because this is something else that I talk about in self-care as well. Like this tiny things add up to quantum shifts over time. So when you actually are working with your clients, what's their response when you say, this is what you need to do? And if it's not getting done, then you need to downgrade your expectations. What do people say? I'm very interested.
They're dubious, but I think all it takes is like one day of going through the whole cycle where they're accountable and they see and they get it. And it gives them so much clarity because they will say, my hormones are saying one thing and life is saying that I'm demanding that I do X, Y, Z. And how am I going to do this? And I say, can you commit to go to the grocery store today? They name the things, not me. And I say, can you do that today? And then just by the next day, they're like, you don't have to say anything. They get the feeling of, whoa, self-esteem.
Yeah. Yeah. Especially if you're having an experience of perimenopause where your ability to juggle or ability to whatever is diminished. I think we've got this beautiful window of opportunity where we're answering an invitation to potentially need to change the ways that we're relating to ourselves and juggling, which again, I think is a big blessing, which painful at the time. I feel like I've been pushed through the eye of a needle in the last 2 years, I have to say. But I do see the light at the end of the tunnel, which is good. When you were talking about the physical, like the pies themselves, like the bits, what do you find happens once people start committing to all of those areas? Because do you find that some people are really great at focusing on one thing? Like you might work with a client that's always been an over-exerciser type of person, but they're not doing anything for their spiritual health. Haven't even thought about that because what the hell is spiritual health? Is that
Right.
what you find?
I do. I think that people, well, first of all, just in general, people aren't really clear on what is spiritual self-care, what is emotional self-care, and intellectual self-care. And so just defining those things for them and helping them to see that there's a lot of overlap among all of those things. And then if you couple that with perimenopause, for me, perimenopause was like, I prided myself on my efficiency and all these things. And then it went down. My efficiency went down and it just killed me. And so I had to,
Right there, Sally, right there.
yeah. Are you?
Yeah, I am. And like you're saying, identity-wise, that's always been something I've really prided myself on, being able to be efficient and really productive and all of those things. And then all of a sudden I'm not. And I'm like, who the F am I now? How do I hold on? Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. Please continue.
No. And so, yes, people tend to think, why would it matter if I put lotion on my legs, or why would it matter if I touched my stomach and put lotion on my stomach? And I'm like, oh, try it. And they're like, oh, yeah, no way. I'm not going to touch my stomach. And then they do, and they really don't have words to describe it. They're just like, oh, okay. So you mean this is really important? I'm like, yes, it's very important.
Self-connection, self-care, self-compassion, allowing yourself some grace. Yeah, all of those things. What do you reckon has made all of this not our default? Like, how have we been so pulled away from this is a huge question because we could start with the patriarchy and work our way down. But what do you see when you're working with a client and you're suggesting these things? What do you reckon have been the barriers to this type of connection and care of self before?
I think, just like I was saying, like however a woman has grown up and learned behavior that keeps you from connecting with people. And so it's going the opposite direction to try to connect with yourself. And then that's going to connect you to your fellow humans. And I think for some of the clients I've worked with, it's a religious upbringing that has, not to knock any religion, but just that's one of the things. Or like in my case, it was substance abuse in the family that just led to wanting to be perfect, look perfect, be perfect, do everything perfectly. And that just separates us from our fellows instead of connects us with them.
And that's very true nature too, because that perfectionism, it's a drive to try and control things so that you can keep yourself safe, or that at least is the way that I see my tendency for that. But it's separating us from ourselves because we have a lens of to be and again, air quoting, good person or a good mother or a good wife or whatever the story is that we've given ourselves the perfect sort of standard of. Mm-hmm. Reality is none of us are perfect. And so by definition, every time we are in our whole, complete, authentic self, which is flawed and not going to get it right all the time and all of those things, we're saying bad, not good. Good is perfect and bad is authentic. And so we have that. I don't know. I feel like, particularly when it happens from a childhood perspective, it's like a plane going like 1 degree off course. 1 degree is not that much, but by the time we hit our 40s and 50s, we can be so far away from understanding who we actually are. Like explored, beautiful, love, higher self, whatever, however you want to language it. Yeah. And it's that connection. I feel like perimenopause has also forced me to look that gap. Like, here's who if I'm really honest with myself, who I know that I am deep down, the authentic self, and comes from a voice of love. Here's the persona that I've created over decades of conditioning. And it's the persona that's causing me the suffering in the perimenopause particularly. And like I said before, one of the personas that I definitely learned as a kid was the caretaker. So I had a hero's cape and I would sweep on in and rescue people. It cost me so much peace of mind and autonomy and truth. I feel like when you're introducing these concepts, Sally's not well, so she's doing very well to be able to even speak to us. I must say too, Sally, just by the by, your glasses are awesome.
Thank you.
What the coolest, what is that shape called? Is it portrait?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. I love them and I want to buy them every time I go to get new glasses and just suit my face, but I'm very cool.
Oh my God. Thank you.
I'm wondering, what are some of the big things that you learned through your journey through perimenopause? So when you had that identity of being the efficient one and then that got wobbly during menopause, what did it invite you to evolve into, or what changed for you in the way that you see yourself in the world?
Let's see. I think my fear was being unlovable if I wasn't perfect enough or whatever. And I've let go of that all year after year. It's been a work in progress. And then too, nowadays, menopause is getting its day in the sun, but it's through prescriptions and over the counter. And you got to get rid of the hot flashes and do this special diet and all these things. And that kind of perpetuated the thought that, gosh, as I age, I'm definitely not going to be lovable anymore if I'm having hot flashes or, if I'm sweaty or if I'm whatever. And so I had to kind of give myself a lot of talking to about just that I am precious just the way I am. And whether I'm having hot flashes or not, whatever, and really look at the emotional regulation or the emotional intelligence, the EQ, instead of the products or the diet or the specific exercise plan. All those things I'm very knowledgeable about. And it's more about that emotional regulation piece for me. And how do my emotional agility, I like to think of it as too. And so I really have worked to develop those components of who I am. Emotional intelligence, meaning like, can I identify a feeling when it comes? Do I know how to express it in healthy, normal, and appropriate ways? So just because I've gotten older and, maybe wiser or whatever, it doesn't mean I automatically know how to express feelings in healthy, normal, and appropriate ways. I can't just vomit on you because you piss me off. I need to learn how to temper that and how to so journaling, again, is where I go with that stuff. And I talk about that in the book as well. But I've really just had to strengthen my resolve and reassure myself time and time again through perimenopause. And now I'm postmenopausal, 64, that this is what's right for me, despite what's going on out there in the world, all the noise that's telling me, all the Super Bowl commercials about products, what my face looks like, how many wrinkles I have, all the things. And just tune it out and be true to me.
Well, so much gold in what you're saying. I love that we're having more menopause conversations. I think that's good. I do not love that it is automatically turned into a commercial. What can we sell to women? I think there is a huge danger in the existing narrative about hormone deficiency and a very medicalized way of looking at menopause, because I think it is, again, reinforcing the gender and age bias against older women, that they're somehow deficient. We are not deficient. We're undergoing a natural, normal transition. And I'm not anti-HRT by any stretch of the imagination.
No.
It's part of a multi-layered approach that I personally use. But I think there's a danger in people being sold that there is some sort of magic pill that will make this easier without the inner work and the self-concept and identity shifts that you're talking about. I am absolutely blessed at the moment as a copywriter to be working with someone who specializes in the psychology of midlife. And so as a result of that work, I've been doing a lot of reading around the social and cultural lens of menopause versus the medical lens of menopause. And I have always talked about, I feel like perimenopause is a rite of passage. I feel like we've got an invitation to shed a lot of skins and really look at the way that we want to be in the world and what is no longer sustainable for us. I think that's a very powerful part of it. But in the reading that I've been doing, and also in this particular person's body of work that she's developed over years, she's talking about these big shifts that similar to the shifts that we undergo in adolescence, which is very interesting. So it's the other end of the reproductive years shift. But things like our sense of identity, our need for autonomy, sexual, I don't want to say healing's not the right word, but as the identity of being a sexual being and our ability to have intimacy with other people and also with ourselves. So all of these huge concepts. And I think that what you're saying about emotional agility, I really love that term because emotional resilience is where my mind goes to, but agility is great. It makes me think of those agility dogs responding to their environment and being able to, very cool. Can you tell us more about, because when you're talking about, can I have a feeling? Can I develop in myself to have a feeling? And this can include the deep rage that some of us have in perimenopause. I definitely did. And I believe that's from many, many decades of suppressing my anger. Anywho, that's a whole other episode. But when you say I can have a feeling and I use journaling to help me, it sounds like journaling's part of your processing before you get to act, which may definitely come from the conditioned part of ourselves that grew up in a dysfunctional household where people did vomit their feelings on other people. Tell us a bit more about how you approach that from a journaling perspective, because, I feel like, again, that's one episode. Send me on my therapy session, people.
If I were to just erupt on a person, it's perfectly acceptable to have feelings of anger and disappointment and rage and all the things. But it's what I do with those feelings. So typically what I'll do if I have those feelings none of those feelings were allowed when I was growing up. So I ate them all.
Exactly.
I stuffed them down. But so what I'll do is I will actually write the person a letter that the person is never going to receive, never. And that's where I get out I put all the stuff into the garbage disposal is one way of thinking about it. And then I will actually read the writing to a safe person who is not the person that it's about. And then that's like flipping the switch and turning on the garbage disposal. So that gets rid of all the feelings. But what that does also is from there, I'm able to separate out, there may be something that needs to be said to that person, but not all the things need to be said to the person. So that's my way of sorting through in a safe manner where nobody gets hurt. What is actually appropriate or healthy, normal, and appropriate to say to the person, whether it's a boundary or, I appreciate that this, you felt that way and that hurt my feelings when you said this or whatever, the thing. Because we're always going back to trying to connect with our fellows. That way, you want to be heard if you want to connect with someone. If you say something that's venomous, you are not going to be heard. The person will go on the defensive. So this is a way that I sort through my thoughts and feelings and figure out the part that's appropriate to say that can cultivate an enhanced relationship with that person or help me decide that person's not for me and I don't want that person in my life anymore. But I don't put them in the friend's graveyard without thinking about it first. I don't make hasty decisions that are based on nothing, not logic.
High emotion that is often not a response necessarily to what happened right in front of you, but is triggering something that has happened multiple times in the past. Yes.
Exactly.
I'm just thinking about all of the relationships that have ended up in my friend's graveyard because I haven't had the emotional capacity to do what you're talking about in my younger years, where I just found it very difficult to communicate clearly what my needs were and what my boundaries were, because my boundaries were, I didn't have any boundaries. I didn't have any boundaries because my relationship with this parent is so colored the way that all of my relationships flowed. And so what would happen is someone would do something that, either did hurt me or did trigger that big ball of emotion. And I didn't have the skill to sort it out, like you're saying. And so I'd just be like, speaking to you ever again, because I need to protect myself, but I don't have any better way of doing it than just going, I'm not going to deal with you. And it makes me very sad for my younger self because I've lost friendships that I didn't need to. I just could have had a proper conversation. And anyway, you can't fix things going backwards, but I'm very grateful that I have developed the skill to do that a little bit more. I'm interested to hear, because you keep on coming back to the concept of connecting with our fellows. And you said something before, which I really loved. It's like connecting to yourself is a gateway to learning how to connect with other people or having the experience of that connection. What do you reckon, when you were going through perimenopause, what shifted in your ability to connect as a result of like the emotional agility you were just talking about, but also was there other layers of like barriers or things that caused you to keep people at arm's distance? Like what other things have you found in sort of transition stage or since, whichever?
Now it's my therapy. I think pain from a marriage that hadn't been working and that I'd been trying to decide whether to stay or go for basically about 10 years. Wait, this is so emotional. Say the question again.
Oh. Thank you for your grace. And you don't have to answer if you don't want to.
No, I will.
I'm just interested because when you're saying connection to self as a gateway to connection to others, and as through this like midlife transition, we go through a lot of learning different ways of being. I'm just interested what else contributed to holding people at arm's length rather than having that connection that you keep on talking about with your fellows.
I feel like I needed to gain more humility and as in like teachability, because I don't know who I am. I'm intelligent. I've kept this weight off all these years through a lifestyle change. I've done amazing things in my life, as I'm sure you have too, and a lot of your listeners have. And then to say, okay, at that point I was in my mid 40s. Am I going to have to like learn some more new stuff? I don't want to learn more new stuff. I thought I was done.
So exhausting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Work.
Yeah, I totally relate to that, particularly when you've done amazing things and they become part of the way that you identify yourself. Because this is my outward expression of proving myself to the world type of thing. And then it's, whoa, hang on a minute. I can be an intelligent person. And my husband loves to say this about me. We are the exact opposite. Like I'm super book smart, like academic, that sort of, but I cannot, like I have no spatial or manual intelligence at all. Like I reckon I'm in the negative. Like I can bump into a couch behind me. Like I just do not have the ability. And this has been shown in, we've renovated a lot before and he'll be like, oh, just move this wall and whatever. I'm like, no, I've got nothing. There's nothing going on in my head. And I feel like one of the ways I identified myself was like the achievement of like academic success and that sort of stuff. But then it's really confronting to be forced to realize that your emotional intelligence may not be at the stage you would like it to be, or that would allow that true connection. And yeah, it's confronting, really confronting.
And I did, just for the record, I did decide eventually to leave that marriage. And there was a huge fear of what's that going to be like? Can I make it? And I'm here to say, like, I am making it. I am do it. My life is so much better now. I have so many rich relationships. My existing ones got better and new amazing ones came in to my life as well. And that was probably the most scary thing I've ever done in my life. And I did it.
Do you think that's
I overcame it.
Yeah, it's that kind of the balance of making that decision that you wouldn't necessarily settle in a relationship, and then it becomes like almost like the springboard to actually develop deeper relationships. Because I think when you're accepting less than what you really want or wish for in a relationship, it can impact the way that you allow all relationships to happen. If you downgrade expectations in one area, by definition, I don't know whether it's, yeah. So I wonder whether saying, no, I actually am choosing something different enabled the richer relationships, or were you just on that trajectory anyway? It's probably all part of that transition.
I think it facilitated a lot more growth to do that scary thing and to just jump into the unknown and go, I don't know if I'm going to be alone for the rest of my life, but it's okay. I'm going to do it anyways.
Yeah. Amazing. Amazing, amazing, amazing. I have marked a couple of things in your book that I wanted to read out in this interview because actually we've talked about the first one, but I really love how you talk about the critical inner voice in this little snippet chapter. I love these snippet chapters. When I get into bed, I do not want to read a whole chapter of anything. I just want a couple of little things. So it's been perfect. This is chapter 12 in Sally's first book. We haven't spoken about your second book, so we need to get to that as well. Critical inner voice buys a bullhorn and works overtime. First of all, amazing picture, great storytelling. I have a critical voice inside my head that talks incessantly. No, I'm not psychotic to the best of my knowledge. It's a voice that constantly shames me or shoulds me. You should not have said that. You should have done that. You should already know that. You should be finished already. If I had to draw a picture of what's going on in my head, I would draw a little man riding atop a big old 1970s station wagon, carrying a bullhorn and screaming mean things. Would I say these things to you? No. Would I keep people in my life who spoke to me this way? Absolutely not. Now, it does go on, but that voice, which definitely can be ramped up in the perimenopause transition, for people to understand that it actually can be part of the psychological shift that we undergo in perimenopause. You are not alone if that is your reality. That is also my reality. And like I said before, on the days that I'm not sleeping well or I'm under extra stress, the bullhorn man gets even louder. It's your defenses are down or something. I just really love the way that you make that so identifiable for people. I think that your writing is beautiful. I also love this one. This is the other end of the spectrum. And I wanted to read this one out because when you are having those days that are really tricky and trying, this awareness, and particularly this often comes up when I talk to people in postmenopausal years, where their overarching message to those of us in the messy middle is it is for a purpose and it does get better. And I hold on to that on those days. So I love this too. Green light days. When you're driving someplace and every light turns green just as you approach, even the lights that usually stay red super long are all green. When this happens, usually everything else also seems to go well that day. It's the strangest thing. My son is easygoing and doesn't try to torture the dogs. My hormones cooperate with my agenda. I feel on top of the world. And then this is my favorite bit. I only have a green light day about once every 3 months, but they are significant. And so I just want to say to anyone who's at either end of those extremes, it is all for purpose and it is all, I think, necessary to this transformation that we're undergoing. And thank you for your beautiful way of sharing the reality of both ends of the spectrum and everything in between. That's just two of my favorite little bits that I've come across. And I haven't read every single bit because I've only been snacking. So beautiful, beautifully said. What would you say? I know this is one of those twee hypothetical questions, but if you could look back, I don't know, say to 40-year-old Sally, what do you reckon the thing that you would most want her to understand about this self-connection as a gateway to connection in your life?
love the hell out of yourself despite your better judgment.
And when the bullhorn man comes, just realize it's just one part of you, and you can relate to yourself through that self-compassion filter. Oh, love your work. Please tell us about your second book, because I haven't mentioned it and I would like you to be able to share that with our audience.
The second book, so the first book is where you figure out, okay, this is perimenopause. And even though I didn't give my permission, I could possibly be there. The first book, and then just going, okay, what's that going to look like and how am I going to embrace it? And then the second book is more about, all right, you may actually be postmenopausal, but you don't have to be. You may just have read the first book and you're advanced now. But the second book, like, now that this is happening, how are you going to spread your wings and give back to the community and like really go with your like best talents? Like, you don't want to deprive the world of the wonderful you. So how are you going to do that? How are you going to give back to the community with your special talents?
So good. How are you going to deliver your gifts to the world? Because if not now, when? Yes. So good. Something else I want to touch on also to bring our conversation to a close is when you were talking about your P.I.E.S before, something that you included in your answers was the P.I.E.S, the self-care concept P.I.E.S can help women make friends with their bodies as well. And we haven't really spoken about the body end of things. So as our kind of culmination thing, like we've talked about connection to self, how can our connection and our relationship with our bodies shift through that more self-care, more connection, more awareness?
I think just doing the self-care P.I.E.S, it is going to come. The making friends with your body, the improving your immune and mental health, the breaking free from the negative self-talk, that voice that goes on in our head that we've been talking about today, that it's just going to happen. It's a byproduct of doing that, especially the things where there are things that involve with maybe like looking at yourself in the mirror and saying, I love you, no matter what things look like, what, you know, if you're wanting to grab your arm, whatever your thing is that you grab and grimace, things like that, it's just going to be a byproduct. And sometimes when I started doing all these things, I didn't believe they were going to work. And I just took direction from someone who had been there before me, and I trusted them. And I believed them that it could happen. If it could happen for them, it could happen for me. And a lot of faith. I just had to believe.
So good, so good, so good. I have loved everything that we've chatted about. You have a really cool quiz on your website that I also wanted to talk about. So can you tell us? We'll put in the show notes where to find it, but can you tell us a little bit about the quiz and what it helps people to uncover? Particularly if they're at that beginning point where they're like, I did not give my permission. This is not happening. I'm in denial.
I was there. I think I call it the quality of your longevity instead of, I found in several years of being obsessed with menopause and helping women don't want to hear that word. So now I say longevity instead. And I think your title, I know your title of your podcast has recently changed. They with me there. Like it's a word. So I like to talk about maximizing your longevity and making the best of it. And it doesn't matter whether you're menopausal or where you are hormonally, it's always going to be in your best advantage to live your best life and your best quality longevity life if you are emotionally literate. So it's like a twofer, because you're saying like, what are these feelings? Could it be menopause? And it's just to educate you. And maybe even if you know someone else, maybe you've come to terms with the whole perimenopause transition, and you don't know how to have that conversation with them. You can say, hey, I heard about this quiz, take this quiz. And the quiz is going to just talk about feelings and gently bring you into feelings identification and perimenopause. And if any of this hat fits for you, you might want to wear it. And this will help you take charge of your longevity, prioritize it, and maybe share it with a friend.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, if you do have a friend, I'm actually thinking about one particular person I was just talking to the other day, and she was saying a few things about her sleep's changed and cycles changed and her ability to manage stress has changed. And I said, do you think that, and she's my age, in the window of like potential that this could be perimenopause. And I said, do you think it might be the start of perimenopause? And hey, look at horror. That was like, no. I was like, oh, okay, just wondering. But actually having somewhere to send someone to who is very like, nope, not happening to me. That's not my story. That happens to old people, whatever it is actually very helpful. Thank you. I'm going to send it.
Yes. And you know what I also wanted to say too is in my book, I talk about varsity menopause, like varsity being like the best athletic people on the team and everything. And so I call it the varsity longevity starter kit. So if you take the quiz, you're going to get the access to the free varsity longevity starter kit just to jumpstart you and help you look at your longevity. And it gives you links to some cool podcasts that are very matter of fact. And they talk about things like lubrication and things that are super important during menopause. Yeah. People don't like to say. And it's some cool links in there in the varsity longevity starter kit that can give you some books, some other things. And then I just tell people also find an accountability partner. You don't have to do this alone. And if you do introduce us to a friend, that may open up like a whole beautiful relationship with that person where you can have that conversation and not feel alone and isolated anymore.
I have a friend that is exactly like that. We keep in touch on the daily through voice noting and then also catch up every couple of weeks we aim for. But that relationship and the level of accountability that's just brought, like what I'm saying with the walking, that's the same friend. It's been really powerful because I can promise things to myself and let it not be important. But yeah, when I'm externalizing it, it makes me more clear on why I want to do things as well. Because sometimes it's just like a list. But then when I'm like, I really want to walk, like I don't care about my step count. What I care about is feeling like I'm moving my body in a way that actually makes me feel good and helps me to age well. Yeah, I just think that accountability is super important. And to be able to say, I voice noted it this morning and I was like, I have had 4.25 hours sleep. What the actual this is ridiculous. But I guess we could use each other like a journaling thing because it's okay, now I've externalized it. And the fact is I've got joyful things on my list to do and not much demand at all. And I will probably have an afternoon nap and so not adding the suffering on top of the story. Good. Sally Bartlett, you have been a joy. I highly recommend if you are like me and you don't love like reading big chunks of stuff at night anyway, this is my thing. I love the fact that I can just dive into this and very often it's the perfect thing. That's what I love. It's choose your own adventure. So that's a good reminder today. Like my tiredness.
Sure.
So thank you so much for what you do in the world and sharing so generously. And we will put all the links to everything. But you can find, I can't even find where is your website, my love? Please share them. Please do. Sorry, sallybartlett.com?
sallybartlett.com.
So it's Barlett. Kind of similar to
actually, Bartlett.
Oh, did I not say that far out? Okay. I can spell people, but I am tired. Anyway, Sally. Have a wonderful evening and it's been a joy. Thank you so much for sharing.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for tuning in, my friend. And if you enjoyed this ep, please share it with another midlife friend or take the opportunity to go and rate and review the show on your favourite listening platform. All of these things really help us to reach more women in midlife. Now, I don't know if you know, but I am both a storyteller who helps healers and helpers capture and communicate their work through the magic of storytelling, and I'm a midlife self-care coach who is super passionate about helping other women reframe perimenopause and midlife as a powerful and purposeful time of transformation. To find out more about me and my work, you can head to Instagram at Kylie Patchett or my website kpcreative.com.au, and that is KPKREATIVE. reative.com.au, and you will find all of those links in the show notes. Have a spectacular day, and may you be setting yourself wild and finally fucking free.